950 ESPN San Antonio for everything Cowboys. From Dallas Cowboys Training Camp, brought to you by Jason Thompson, the Thompson Law Firm, Dennis Jewelry Company, and by Papa Nachos.
You know, people think that the last 2 years have been miserable. The last 2 years have not been miserable. They've been frustrating. They haven't been miserable. Miserable is gets you the number one draft choice.
Yeah, that's the Cleveland Browns. They'd take 8-8.
Thank you. The Kansas City Chiefs last year would have easily taken 8-8. In 2007, the Cowboys were the best team in the NFC, and they laid an egg in their first playoff game. In 2008, but they were 13-3. You can't say they were mediocre even, but they didn't win a playoff game. And then in 2008, the quarterback got hurt. Everything changes. And in 2009, everybody said, win a playoff game. That's all we want is to win a playoff game. And I said, no, that's not all you want. Believe me, that's not all you want. You want to win the last game of the year. And so they won a playoff game. And that wasn't enough. And then in 2010, they had another quarter. The quarterback got hurt again, and they fell. Oh no, he didn't get hurt, but they fell apart, right? He did get hurt.
No, he did. Again, he only played 6 games.
Yeah, he got hurt again in 2010, and they were 1-7.
Fired the coach
and had to change coaches. So 1-7, that was bad. That was bad. Okay, then Garrett turned them right around. And I think they have been what their talent and injuries have dictated they should be the last 2 years. Now, this year, we're looking at a year where the division is wide open. There's no powerhouse team on paper in the division. It also looks like, on paper, that the way into the playoffs is going to be through winning the division because there seem to be a lot of strong teams in other divisions in the NFC. They can absolutely win the division. They can. Will they be better? I think they will. Who else is going to get hurt in the next month? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But if they have Spencer and Ratliff, and I can make a case for you why the offensive line would be a heck of a lot better. Leary looks they're in love with Ron Leary, and we can see from 3 days of practice why. Frederick, Leary, give me a little bit better play at right guard. I think Free improves. Now you've got a whole different offensive line. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. The guy they brought in here for Demetrius Bell, who hadn't practiced yet, did you see him play last year for the Eagles? That's worse.
Well, he's been here for 9 days, and he can't even pass the conditioning test.
Doug Free wasn't horrible. He was just not up to the contract. He regressed. He was not nearly as good as he was that half year playing for Colombo when Colombo was hurt in 2009. But if they play better in the offensive line, then I think they will run better and run more. And if they do that, I think they've got an offense that can do a whole lot of things. Defensively, it's going to take a little time to transition into the new system. But if they can stay healthy, then I think Carter and Lee on the field together can do a lot of great things. And I believe in Ware and Spencer and Ratliff and Hatcher. I mean, I think they've got the makings of a good team. I think they can make the playoffs. I think they can win the division. Don't tell me if they win the division and lose the wild card game that everyone will be happy. If they win the division and win a wild card game and lose by 2 touchdowns in the divisional game, people will say, okay, it was a little better, but no one's going to be happy, and they shouldn't be. I just think that when we talk about fans being disgusted, I think that has much more to do with the fans' expectations, which I submit are unrealistic, than it does with what the football team is doing and trying to do. That's just my personal opinion.
Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys, with us here on the Hardline. The criticism of Tony Romo, you hear it all the time, and now he signed the big contract. Is any of that fair?
What do you think?
I think, my personal opinion, I'm a big Romo backer. I've defended him. I think he's better than most quarterbacks in the league. But I do submit that I understand the point of view of the people who say that in the biggest moments, in the biggest games, the games which my argument was they would not have been in games that meant a lot last year if it weren't for Romo.
Yeah.
But you can't argue that in the biggest games that he's played in, he's performed poorly.
I can argue. No, I can argue. No, I can't argue that. I can't argue that he didn't play well against Washington last year.
Or that he doesn't play well in every single big game.
Not every game.
Because the narrative's been written about Tony Romo, right? And so now every big game
so it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter anymore because he's won a lot of big games. But people don't mean big games; they mean playoff games.
Right, playoff
That's what
games.
they mean. And so he's won one, and he didn't play. What's he play? What's he been the quarterback in? Two or three?
I think 4. I think he's 1-3 in playoff games he started.
So, there are a lot of quarterbacks. People always forget this. Every quarterback that he's supposed to be being compared to in the league came into, except for Tom Brady, who was a 6th-round pick. All the rest of them, all of them, they were either first-round picks or, in the case of Drew Brees, the first pick in the 2nd round. This guy was an undrafted free agent. He's already exceeded every expectation that every football person had for him, except for him. He's rewritten the record book. I think it's very clear with what they've had in the running game and the offensive line the last 2 years. They wouldn't have even been in contention if they hadn't had him. Now, you cannot argue with the fact that he hasn't won playoff games. And it may be, when his history is finally written, that he'll be one of those quarterbacks who was good enough to go to a certain level, and that's all. I think Danny White is unfairly maligned for what he did. He didn't, but he followed Staubach. And when Tony Romo takes the field, he doesn't have just the expectations of the world on him. He's got 8 over one shoulder and 12 over the other shoulder. And that's just what you live with when you're quarterback in the Dallas Cowboys. So when you say, not you, Eric, when people say, Romo can't do it, should never have gotten that contract. All right. Who's your alternative?
Exactly.
I think Quincy Carter's available.
Just take all the time you need. I'll just sit here and wait until you tell me who the quarterback's going to be. It is time for them to start looking around for his replacement, but he's several years from replacement, in my opinion. People say, well, you didn't have to sign him. You could have done what the Ravens did with Flacco. You could have. There wasn't really any need to, and in fact you can make the case that because of the salary cap constraints, the Cowboys actually needed the money they saved by redoing Romo's contract, redoing the contract of a guy they wanted to keep anyway, allowed them to sign some of the other players that they did because of the cap constraints. So unless you're ready to come with an alternative, it's fine to say, he stinks. It's fine to say that, but A, I don't think he stinks, and B, until you're ready to come with an alternative, then I'm going to be he can quarterback my team.
Brad Sham joining us. You can hear the play-by-play for every Cowboys game with Brad Sham on our brother station 102.7 Jack FM, and, of course, the Brad Sham Show on 1250 ESPN San Antonio.